Beijing has shown no intention to remove sanctions on $20 billion worth of Australian exports, despite repeated calls from the Prime Minister and refreshed calls from the new Prime Minister. And the Shadow Trade and Tourism Minister, Kevin Hogan, joins us live now. Kevin, good morning to you. Does that stance surprise you at all?
Look, unfortunately, no, Pete, it doesn't surprise me. But look, we need to keep working at the relationship. We don't believe when those sanctions were imposed a number of years ago now were legal. We're appealing them through the WTO. So, look, we think they're unfair sanctions, and I encourage the new government to keep plugging away, because for our exporters, we would like access to that market again.
Well, what do you make of what your opponent, Don Farrell, has done so far, the moves he's made in the new position?
Well, look, I think it's good that he's reached out. I mean, he's requested a meeting from his counterpart in China. I think that was a good thing to do. I don't think that's been approved. That hasn't been agreed, that meeting yet. I know there was a meeting, as we know, between the two defence ministers. But look, I think it's good he's reached out. He wants to try start dialogue with them, which he should. That being said, I mean, China has made it very publicly that to start normalised relationships with Australia, they have 14 requirements on those. Now, we don't think any of those requirements are necessary, but look, it's good to try and reach out.
Beijing has continued to dig its heels in, as we've just spoken about. Here's what it called it overnight. It says the ban on Australian exports, or the sanctions, I should say, on Australian exports, are legitimate. They are lawful. They are beyond reproach, it says, and they are within the WTO rules because it's in China's interests. I mean, is that right?
Well, no, I will have to agree to disagree with that one on China, and that's why the WTO is there. They can arbitrate these things. We've put in a while ago now for them to look at this. We think that the sanctions that China have put on us are not legal. There's rules that you have to abide by when you play this free trade game and the trade between countries, and you enter these agreements. So, look, we've put that to the WTO, and we look forward to their findings.
A few other issues. Now, you're in opposition now, but the Nats have got trade back. Kevin, what's your priority?
Well, look, our priority, trade is often bipartisan because we want as much access to exporters that we can get. I think if you look back when we came to government in 2013, about just under 20% of goods that we exported were covered by free trade agreements. That's now up to over 80%. So what does that do? That gives our exporters increased customers, more customer base around the world. That's what we're looking to do. We're looking for the free trade agreement that we brought in with India and the UK late last year to come into force. And I know the new minister will be working on an agreement with the EU, and that's the focus.
Just on energy, Chris Bowen has declared it is a race to get transmission and storage around renewable projects, and Australia is starting 10 years late. Do you accept that?
Look, energy has been a complicated issue in this country, but look, what we need is the balance right. We don't have to be anti or pro renewables, nuclear or coal or anything, but we want cheap emissions, we want reliable energy, and we want, low emissions, cheap energy. And that's the focus it's got to be. So there's work to be done. The state governments are involved in this as well, which makes it more complicated. But look, we need to meet our international obligations with emissions reductions, but we need cheap and reliable energy as well.
Do you support Labor's 43% reduction?
Look, I think we'll exceed our reduction. We took 26 to 28% reductions to the election. That's what we've agreed that we will do. We will exceed that. Australia always exceeds its emissions reductions, and we will continue to.
But as for 43%?
Look, I don't think it needs to be legislated. We will exceed the 28% commitments that we've done. I think we're on target to meet somewhere in the mid-30s, and that's what we're doing, our international obligations, if we do that.
So you won't be supporting it?
Look, I don't think we need to legislate it, no.
Yeah. This is a very much a state issue, but what do you make of the fiasco surrounding John Barilaro becoming a US Trade Commissioner?
Well, look, I think, as long as a good independent process has been followed, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I don't think those positions should always be held by bureaucrats. My understanding is that it went through an independent process. He has been the trade minister, so he obviously has the qualifications for that role. But look, if they have a problem with it, there's an independent inquiry, or there's an inquiry going into the process that was undertaken. And if people have got concerns about that, that's healthy. Do
you have a concern about how that decision came about, though, where it was given to another bureaucrat, then that bureaucrat lost the job, it was re-advertised, it was then given to John Barilaro, who created the job in the first place when he was Trade Minister? I mean, is there a stench there in your view?
Well, look, I get that the upper house of the New South Wales Parliament want to have a look at that process. I think that's a good idea. If people have got questions to ask about that, I think that's healthy. But look, in the general bigger picture, for a former trade minister to get a trade gig, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think some political appointments, look at Joe Hockey as ambassador to the US. I think that was a great political appointment. So I don't think they're necessarily a bad thing. But look, if people are questioning process, it needs to be looked at.
Is he an asset? Is he an asset to have in New York, John Barilaro?
Well, look, he's got a good CV for it. I mean, he's been the trade minister, he's been deputy premier, so he certainly has a lot of contacts. He has a lot of knowledge of the trade area. But look, again, the important part here is the process of how it was arrived at. If that's been investigated because people have concerns, that's good.
It's not a bad gig, though. I mean, look, $500K a year. What do you actually do that the federal government wouldn't already be doing?
Well, look, it's like what, like the role that Joe Hockey played as an example as ambassador to the US. I mean, people like ex-politicians can have good networks. They obviously have experience in the area. So, look, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that a politician be given these roles. But look, if there's a question about the process, then that has to be investigated.
Okay. Good to see you, Kevin. Best of luck in the role. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.